before we hop into some really exciting questions, I would love to allow AJ and Lizzie to introduce themselves, if that's all right. So Lizzie, could you take it away?
Yeah, hi, I'm Lizzie Goyer. I'm Senior Manager, Employee Experience Communications at Lightspeed. I can tell you a bit about Lightspeed. We are a one-stop commerce platform for retail and hospitality businesses around the world. We're headquartered in a castle in Montreal, Canada, and we are 3,000 employees around the globe. I'm in a really small team of 3 to 4 internal comms people, and we are based in London, Montreal, and me down in Asia Pacific, in Auckland. So I've flown up from Auckland. That's Auckland, New Zealand, not Oakland, California. I think probably should be getting an award for traveling the furthest to be here today.
Yes, you should.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be wheeling that out later, that award. Yeah, like I do employee experience comms, where I'm developing and strategizing all of our sort of content that's to engage our employees, and yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Yeah, and I'm also a published author as Lizzie Harwood. Yeah.
Awesome. We're so happy to have you here today, Lizzie. Thank you.
And those are crime books, right?
Yeah, crime
Yeah,
fiction.
crime, yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah.
Multifaceted. And AJ would love to hear from you as well.
Yeah, so my name is AJ Vaughn. I'm the founder of the E1B2 Collective, Employees First, Business Second. The best way to put it, it's like a holding company for HR. So we have brands in internal comms, we have brands that touch on employee experience, talent acquisition, employer branding, big data like human capability. We do have a partnership with Deloitte. So we do a bunch of things, DE&I as well. So for me, it started off very early in my career at 19. I founded a company, grew to about 300 employees, had a partnership with Under Armour, made a really crucial mistake in the people operations department. And so at that point, that's when I figured out that HR leadership, people operations had to be a focus. I was a very young man, I was 21. And so from there, I decided to put all of my energy, resources, time, perspective into that work. And then eventually was the head of people for about 6 years. So I actually have some practitioner experience as well. But now I'm on the entrepreneurial side. I'm also with a company called Top Employers Institute, which is like the audit and unpack HR best practices as well, which is interesting and fun and creative. So I do a bunch of things, very busy, podcast, speaker, writer. Love the Ravens, hoping that we have a really interesting day today. Lamar Jackson needs to figure out what he's doing. But besides that, yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. We're so happy to have you, AJ. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So we have a few prepared questions that we'll want to cover with Lizzie and AJ, and we will leave some time at the end for questions. So if questions pop up in your head, just save them, and we'll leave some time at the end. So first question. Over the last few years, employee experience has become a more important element of talent acquisition. How has the internal communications approach to employee experience changed and evolved in that same time?
Yeah, I mean, in the past few years, we've seen enormous change. Lightspeed has seen enormous change also with many acquisitions, and we quadrupled our size since 2019. And so actually what we needed to do is have one platform, you know, one set of tools for our workforce to all come together on. So we chose like the staff-based platform, like we launched with an intranet first and then added the app, and we've also got email tool. But that for us as internal comms practitioners was really key. A really key evolution for us to build that from the ground up, and with that internal comms lens on all of our content. So that was super exciting, and doing that, it's opened up our way to be, you know, retaining and attracting great talent and engaging the talent that have joined. So yeah, it's like having that employee experience lens internally first is really like helping to drive that attraction. Yeah.
Great to hear.
I have many thoughts on this, a lot of thoughts. Where do I want to go? And cut me off, I'll start ranting. So the first thing, I think a lot of companies need to do the hard work of actually being a great company I think from a recruiting perspective, internal comms, employer branding, we kind of fake the funk, we BS a little bit, and I think the hardest thing to do is just to kind of hold a mirror up to the company and kind of audit and unpack who we actually are, and see, do we have great internal comms? Do we have great onboarding best practices? Are we actually doing a great job from a D&I perspective? Do we have great workflows and communications internally where people kind of know the responsibilities and things of that nature? And so I think companies need to, first step, just do the hard work of actually being a great company, actually being someone that is excited about coming to your organization. And I think internal comms leaders need to have a little bit more ownership in that process, a little bit more responsibility with HR teams, frankly. And I think the first step for me is go to your team members internally that do appreciate the company and understand why, right? Have some of those fireside chats internally, have some of those one-on-one conversations. I personally am not a huge fan of surveys. I understand how it scales, right? Companies are 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 employees, but as an internal comms leader, the least you can do is go to a manager that may lead a team of 50, 100, 5, 10, whatever the case is going to be, and teach them some of the frameworks of how to have that conversation, how to unpack that information, and then take that data and then start to scale that out. Now, on the other side of that, there may be employees that are not happy inside the company. I love that information, right? My wife's in the back here, and during our first date, I said, look, here are all the negative, crazy, bad things about me. Let's just get it out in the open.
Brave.
Right? It's a good thing. A lot of people, again, it's like dating. A lot of people fake, kind of like they try to look great, smell great, say all the great things about them, and there's like a lot of cobweb, negative things in the background. But I think it's, again, internal comms leaders, managers, do the hard work to understand what people don't like what are the crazy, negative, horrible things, and then what are the things in the middle as well, and then try to fix the bad things, and then the things that are in the middle, be transparent about them. So partner with your employer branding teams, partner with your recruiting teams, and push out that authentic information. Tell an applicant, hey, we don't quite have things figured out here, we don't have quite figured out in this department, and then push that communications out, and then let them make an authentic decision if this is going to be the company for them. So those are a few thoughts and ideas on that topic, because I love the intersection of how internal comms leaders, recruiting teams, and employer branding teams can kind of work together to drive more authentic communications and then get more impactful results as they're trying to recruit teams.
I love that, especially in today's discussion about AI, this concept of authenticity, how important it is to really cherish that at your organization.
1,000%.
If internal communicators are doing a great job of creating internal engagement among employees, how can they turn this into external advocacy?
Yeah, so we try to focus on amplifying those everyday experiences, giving employees share of voice, where, with the staff-based platform, we've got a lot of great features that we're leveraging for that. We have a lot of employee-generated news feeds. This might be like sharing their volunteer story from the paid volunteering time that they have. This might be showing their time off, like with photos and what they got up to, or like how they've interacted with our customers, like being retail and hospitality. Like there's so many merchants around the world that we really love our employees to interact with and have a connection to. Or it might be, we have like a policy where you can work like 60 days from almost anywhere. So employees share those stories, and then with their permission, the social teams can repackage that externally to help show the culture, help have that sort of soft external advocacy. We also add buttons, like sharing buttons to our news posts where it's an internal post, but that it can go external, so that right there, they've just read it and then they can just click and they share it to their LinkedIn or their Insta, and that's where it's possible to share. And we have, we try to show, we try to have that customer connection, with some campaigns that we've run. During the pandemic, we had a Lightspeed local campaign of connecting the employees. So it's just that external advocacy where it's natural and not forced, and just a bit more word of mouth, a bit more brand awareness. Yeah. Because we see those 3,000 employees as hopefully ambassadors for the company. Yeah, but only if they want it and they like it. Yeah, so they've got that control.
I have two quick thoughts on this. The first, use your employees in the position of power. I think your employees know what the great things are about the company, right? Put them in the position to tell you what should be pushed out externally as well as internally. So that's step number one. Step number two, I ran into someone here, I don't know if he's here today. There's a podcast tool that's like kind of floating around where you can kind of get a lot of great stories, a lot of great perspectives of what it's like to work inside the company and use a podcast as a format and as a tool to push that out externally as well as internally. I love that. Being a person that has a podcast, I think millions of people across the world are listening to podcasts today. So having that as a tool to amplify the best amazing things about the company, whether it's what you're doing from a employer branding perspective or what you're doing from an internal perspective or what's it like to actually work here on a day-to-day perspective, push that from a podcast perspective. Because I think a lot of people listen to podcasts, they enjoy podcasts as an easy way to ingest a lot of content, but then you can also reverse that and push it out externally where you may have some people that never even thought about working at your company stumble upon the podcast, know that a colleague is listening to it, and now you have some external kind of macro reach. So let your employees kind of drive the narrative of what it's like to work at the company, what's amazing about it, and put them in that power, and then use tools like podcasting, which I think is a little bit different externally as well as internally.
I love that.
Yeah.
AJ, this one I'm going to start off with you because I think you'll have some good insights here. So the Great Resignation and quiet quitting were all over our news feeds last year. Do these buzzwords still paint an accurate picture of the current challenges in talent retention and acquisition, or do you think they ever did?
Say that again. I'm thinking.
Okay. The Great Resignation and quiet quitting were all over our news feeds last year. Do these buzzwords still paint an accurate picture of the current challenges in talent retention and acquisition, or do you think they ever did?
I think it's just showing a spotlight on it, honestly. I think it always existed. I think the quiet quitting always existed. I think the Great Resignation, there's a lot to say about that. How am I trying to put this? I want to be politically correct. On the Great Resignation, I think a lot of companies, as we know, kind of got bloated, right? They hired really quickly. They had roles that maybe they didn't need. They had tasks and priorities that maybe weren't as important, and then they had to do a lot of layoffs, right? And I think with that, I think that's a little bit interesting. And then on the flip side of that, you had a lot of employees that just realized that they weren't in the right seats. The companies were not listening to them. Internal comms leaders were not put in the best positions to get the data and push that up to executives and leaders to try to figure out how to position people. So I think employees not being heard and not being recognized and leaving companies or companies firing people because it's too bloated, that's always been happening. But I think, again, podcast, YouTube, social media, it's just more amplified. It's putting more attention, eyes and ears, and I think that's just going to continue to happen. And then as far as the quiet quitting fact, Great Resignation, quiet quitting. My ADD is kicking in, I'm trying to remember.
Do you think these words are painting an accurate picture of the challenges that recruiters and employee experience professionals are facing today?
I think so. And again, I think now it's just being labeled. But I think if you ask any recruiter, right, someone that's recruited teams, someone that's hired employees, it's always been a factor. We've always had to make sure that people were in the right seats, people actually felt appreciated. I know there are tons of employees that are, again, just internally not feeling like they're happy, not feeling like they're satisfied, and are probably looking at other jobs, looking at other opportunities. So I think, again, it's more of a branding and a label perspective than something that is now just coming into fruition. And I think any great recruiter, any great employer branding executive, any great internal comms leader will probably tell you that.
Super insightful. And Lizzie, I'd love to hear your perspective too.
I'm down in New Zealand. We're always, we're kind of ahead, like we are literally like 16 hours ahead, so we are always in the future, coming to you from the future. Actually, like terms like Great Resignation and quiet quitting, those buzzwords that work all around the world are often like we are just behind it or ahead of it. So sometimes like our employee market will turn on a dime. Like one day it'll be a job seekers market. The next day it's the employers market. So we're always fluctuating massively. But definitely there's like a very big business cost to that actual active resignation or the passive disengagement that's coming from the quiet quitting. So like what we've tried to do is, like an example is we've had a return to office initiative where the hybrid model is 3 days in office. So it's not as hybrid as it was before, but still baked a lot of flexibility into it. But we tried to be like action and solution focused with that drive. So we held like an unconference. You can hit me up later to like hear more about unconferences. But this unconference was to particularly solve for return to office, find out what the friction points would be, like literally like enrolling that out so that we could get our people to brainstorm the solutions, like not like go, here's a bunch of solutions for you, but like what are your solutions that you have like with us? So, because you know, people are so smart and they have such great ideas. So the unconference, like we tried to pull actions out of that were actually actionable that we could then follow up with, so that it was, you know, action and solution focused in that way. And I mean, you know, you never really know how engaged people are. Like you really don't really know. People will answer surveys in a certain way. They might say, yeah, I'm going to be thinking about another job in 2 years. And you don't know if that will actually eventuate, if they will change their minds, if they really meant that, if they can find other jobs. So it's quite unquantifiable in a way, like the actual engagement. But yeah, we just try to give people extra like meaning or an extra sense of control over the things that they can control. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll say one thing too, because you were saying how you're kind of listening more to the employees. A lot of people may feel like this time is very uncomfortable, which it objectively is, but use this uncomfortable time to proactively, like you were saying, talk to your employees. I'm an employees first guy, obviously, so put your employees in a position of power to tell you what's wrong, tell you what's not right, tell you what may be causing quiet quitting, right? And then take all of that data and then, like you were saying, put some best practices in place. Have them tell you what best practices you can actually put in place. So then eventually we're going to come out of this, right? Eventually the economy is going to figure itself out. Eventually the quiet quitting and the branding around that's going to start to settle down. So you want to have some best practices locked and loaded. So when that is all said and done, you can actually roll some things out where maybe you won't have to be in this position again. So 10 years from now, when it comes back around, maybe you will be one of those companies that don't have to have that branding, that doesn't have to have that kind of that stigma attached to it, where some of your employees may actually genuinely enjoy being at this company and genuinely feel like they don't have to quiet quit. They can just go to their manager, they can go to their internal comms leader and say, here's where I'm unhappy, and I know you're actually going to do something about it because you heard me in 2021 and moving forward. And so just a couple thoughts. I just wanted to kind of tee up on that.
Yep.
I love this relationship between bottom-up, top-down communications, and how it really should be this, you know, two-way stream.
1,000%.
So with economic uncertainty, cost-cutting, and layoffs, a fact of life these days, sometimes the reality of a company conflicts with its narrative. In cases where employees might be questioning whether their organizations are living up to their stated values, what's your advice for communicators? How can they still maintain a positive and proactive approach to creating a positive employee experience?
Yeah, that's such a hard one, isn't it? Because, you know, that is the reality. We are living in such uncertainty, cost-cutting, layoffs. Yeah, and you're trying to hold up the company values. You know, one of our values is make it human at Lightspeed, and there's a great company in New Zealand. One of their values is don't be a dick. You know,
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
But you know, make it human. Don't be a dick. These are like similar. You know, like human first. And so yeah, it can be very hard to like say, yeah, that's our big value, but we're just cutting all these costs, or your experience is going to be lessened in this way, or you know, people are losing their jobs. So. Like we try to like see how psychological safety is in place on a team level, like to see how well the managers are being perceived by the teams, because all these changes, like, something is rolled out, but it's on the team level that it's really felt. And if there isn't that psychological safety for the team members to go to their managers and have discussions or like talk about, the changes, then it can be hard. So yeah, we try to focus on that psychological safety and then just trying to get like a quite proactive plan with, there's never a good way to like break bad news. But like the more detail and the more, like Martin was saying in the first talk about like more is better, like getting that message through like 7 times to sort of help embed the change or like show how the reason behind those changes is valid because we're now showing that we're doing things in a different way or we're showing the results of that. And that's when you try to lean into those stated values to be like, we are doing this, but we're trying to do it in that human way, human first, approach.
Yeah, many thoughts on this. I'll make a bold statement that I've been on this kick for years. Companies need to start firing managers based off of more humanistic flaws than project management, task, and subject expertise flaws. Companies objectively need to start just moving leaders out that are not adhering to the values, right? It just boggles my mind when they're trying to look at the company at a macro and they're trying to say, well, we need to stand up our values, we need to make sure our employees are focusing on our values when the managers are literally not doing that, right? So that always boggles my mind, and I frankly get pissed off every time about it because I just don't understand. And so to kind of take into a different direction to give a tangible tip, because I used to kind of just get irritated, and then one day a colleague said, well, irritation is nothing if you don't have a tangible plan to it. And I said, okay, you're right. Well, how about we just create 2 leaders inside of a department? Now, many people may be saying, well, that's impossible, budget issues, I get that. But I'll give you the framework, and maybe this is something that can help be connected to the values. Certain people love the people side of leadership. Certain people love the project management, the task-oriented, the subject matter expertise part of the business, right? And so I've always been a big fan of having 2 leaders that sit at the top of a department or sit at the top of an org, right? Where you have someone that really loves the career mapping conversations, really loves partnering with internal comms, partnering with HR, getting that data, figuring how we can retain our employees, figuring out how we can extract more information to figure out how we can change workflows, change compensation, change positioning of seats, right? And then you have certain people that, again, they're just subject matter expertise, really loves making sure that we're checking all the boxes and getting things done. Have both of those people in your department and have your employees know which person they can talk to. And then I believe from a values perspective, it'll start to be a little bit more authentic because your managers will actually be living that out because they'll be also living their truth. So many leaders are being put in positions where they're trying to lead people and they just frankly don't love people. I had an employee years ago, Cornelius, where he just came to me one day, I don't like people. I don't like talking to them a lot. I barely love talking to my family members. I kind of just want to do my work. And I said, and then Donnie, the CEO at the time, he said, well, I think we should fire Cornelius because the role of a manager needs to do both. And I said, well, maybe not, right? And so we looked at it. I said, well, there's like 7 different things he can do behind the scenes that we need, that he will love. And we sat down and we talked to Cornelius. We said, how much do you want to get paid? Okay, we can make that happen. Okay, well, what tasks do you want to work on? Okay, we make that happen. Oh, you don't want to talk to people? Okay, well, let's get Sarah involved. And maybe she can do that. Maybe it's a fractional role. Maybe it's 20 hours a week. And then we figured out a way to have 2 leaders at the top that made sense financially, that made sense workflow-wise. And now everyone in the company felt that we were actually living up and authentically adhering to our values. So kind of went on a little tangent, but I think that's an out-of-the-box way to kind of make sure your values are actually true by actually doing that yourself as a leadership and a management team.
I love that.
Yeah.
Authenticity coming from within, from the manager.
100%.
So I know this will probably resonate with some folks in our audience today. What's your advice for internal communicators who are strapped for resources and time and might even be a team of 1? How can they effectively communicate the employee experience with these limitations?
Yeah, I love that question. Yeah, I've been that team of one in certain roles. I'm in a small team now, but it's still like 3 or 4 in a team serving 3,000, which is probably a good ratio, but yeah, who knows. But definitely, I'd say those who are strapped for resources or time to like repurpose everything that you're creating. I mean, AI obviously has like great opportunities to like help you on that time management, or like collaborate with people in marketing, people in external, so that, you know, they're like, if they've got content writers writing great stuff for the market, see how much you can repurpose that internally. See how you can leverage those like sort of natural influencers that you have as employees, like, you know, that person who's got like, I don't know how many thousand followers on LinkedIn, like if they're sharing some of your, you know, talent acquisition posts, that can like expand your network in big ways. And just like leveraging some of those like employee generated news feeds like we're using with the staff-based solution. It's, you know, then you're getting employees writing your content for you, and you can, you know, you can have a lot of fun with it, and also like, you know, it's like giving them that share of voice. And I think if there's a trade-off between the informational comms or inspirational, I would always go for like making the informational just bullet points, like, you know, use ChatGPT, I guess, if you need to, and then giving it a bit more love and attention to the inspirational, because if you're not able to tell your company's story and your people's story, then no one's going to really remember that like had to know bulletin about, you know, the informational stuff, but they might feel something from the inspirational content, so that, you know, that inspirational stuff is something I'd always go for if it's a choice, if you have to prioritize. Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting fact, I suffer from severe ADD. I have since I was 9 years old. And so when this question came up, I had really nothing to say, but then my mind just started going in a million different places. And when you said something about getting other teams involved, it made me think about how DE&I leaders have employee resource groups. And so maybe, and this is an idea, I don't even know this is actually tangibly practical, but maybe internal comms leaders, you know, if it's a team of one, you know, maybe you have like a little employee resource group internally where you can kind of have a team of people that don't necessarily get paid to do the work, but they just love some of the external support that you need. And maybe you can kind of send some little fractional 5 hours here, 2 hours here of work to kind of help you get some communications out. I think that's something that could be kind of interesting. DE&I leaders that are also a team of one or a team of 2 or 3 use employee resource groups at scale. You know, those groups, I've seen companies where they have 50, 100, 200, 300 employees that are volunteering to join those groups. And so maybe that's something that can start happening for internal comms leaders as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. We've got like 3 networks like that internally at the moment at Lightspeed, and they launched like a year ago, and it's it's amazing. Like some of the lift that's coming from them, and it's just genuine. It's just really like from a really authentic place. So that's a great one to think of.
It's happening again. I have another idea.
Okay, it's happening.
And it could probably support, like, from a retention perspective as well, right? Because maybe you have someone that really loves writing, but they're not actually in a marketing or a writing role technically. Maybe they could start kind of honing their skills there. They inevitably leave your company at some point, which is no issue. And now they have some of those skills on their resume. Or maybe they don't leave your company, and now they can kind of transition into the content side of the business. And you've given them that honor and that opportunity to do that work for a year or two and kind of hone their skills.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we've been leveraging like office managers, like the office pages for all of our locations. Like, we've been adding like a news feed there, so the office managers are making all those posts, so that they don't come to us and say, hey, can you write about the menu that we've got on in the Montreal office next week? And it's like, no, we don't have time for that. So, but they're doing it, and then they put their flair into it, and they, and it's like it's beautiful because, yeah, that's great comms, like it's and that just gives them a lift as well. Like they're like exercising their comms skills. Like maybe they're going to come and join the internal comms team, from that work. And
it's authentic, right? Because maybe they know the voices of that department more than maybe you do. They live, they eat, they work with those people every single day. And so maybe the way that they write the copy, maybe some of the visuals they may have, whatever the case is going to be, maybe that creative can be a little bit more geared. That's authentic because they know Sam, they know Andrew, they know those folks. And so maybe they can create that copy, that creative that will like gear authentically to them.
Yeah, and we've also been like revitalizing our culture clubs or like sort of social committees for locations, with the return to office. The culture clubs, we're trying to make it like that authentic, employee-led culture clubs. So like, sure, we've been setting up some guidance with it and like steering it, but then, I love, setting that on fire in a good way, and then seeing that like spark take off. It's it's really fun. Yeah.
That's awesome. I know I sit on a lot of QBRs of staff-based customers, and this concept of centralized governance with decentralized content creation can often resonate really well for our customers, and we see some of the highest engagement in those channels too. Which is really exciting. Well, we've come to a wonderful part of the panel where we would love to open up the questions to you all. So we'll have some runners running around the aisles with microphones. So if you have questions, please feel free to raise your hand. Would love to hear from the audience. So you have a couple on this side.
Yeah, I think there's one in the back there.
Hey all, Mark from GE. Hey, there's two specific personas I'd like your insight on, and how do we reach better the pre-hire, like everything from like, hey, I'm willing to join my company, to I'm actually walking in the door, and then that new hire, maybe that first 100 days where like I'm searching for like an open door and the opportunities that hit me. Pre-hire and new hire personas, how do we kind of reach them and engage, pull them into our cultures?
Staff-based has some great tools that we're using for that, especially as soon as they get in the door. We've got like onboarding journeys that we've tried to make super engaging and like really like think from the employee's perspective, like day 1 to 4, and then day 30, and then 45, and day 60. Pre-hire also, we've been working on, just having the comms really like pull them in that like great way. I'm still trying to work on like using Staffbase's public page in a way that we can like give that access before they've got their email. So that part we're still like working on, but definitely like we sort of really rely on our talent acquisition teams and HR teams to like be that bridge between signing the offer letter and getting in the door, trying to revamp it to make it a great experience, you always feel like could do more, that's some ways.
I'll give you something a little bit outside the box, and if this is not answering your question, I apologize, but you could, I think you could take a lot of your internal comms leaders and some of your managers and put them in a position of power to interview fellow team members and interview fellow managers. Take that content, either put it in a podcast medium or put it in a video medium, and then put it onto a nice little landing page. And I'm sure Staffbase probably has a product that can do that, or work with your design teams to pull that off, and then take a link and then push that out externally after the interview number 1, after interview number 2, after they even are like browsing on the site, maybe like something that can pop up where they can click it and get 15, 20 videos, 15, 20 audios where they're hearing a day in their life, they're hearing about what's it like to really work in this role, some of the workflows in this role, some of the little nitty-gritty details in this role, so you can have applicants that are even considering joining the company really get a good insight. And then even throughout the hiring process, I remember doing this with a particular employee where before they got to like round 2 of the interview, we sent them the link that said, hey, here's some really crucial things that you need to know prior to even coming on to round 3, because if you're not if you're not congruent and consistent with these variables of these videos, then you probably won't be a great fit here, or you could be a great fit here. We wanted to send that out during round 2 prior to them coming to round 3 to save our time, but also to save their time. So little bit outside the box, but I think it kind of helps in that authenticity kick pre-hire and then post-hire as well.
Yeah, and just being like aware that different candidates have different strengths, and we have like a challenge or a task that we ask candidates to do in the interviewing process, and that sounds like horrific. And I know I spent like a week on mine, but actually for those of us who are like introverted or neurodiverse, it's much more reassuring that you can work and present something to show everything you're bringing to the role than that pressure of the interview process where you've got to be on, you've got to like give answers, you've got to like sum up yourself. In New Zealand, we have like a culture of like, don't brag about yourself, like downplay your abilities, which is very hard for us in interviewing to get ourselves across. So it's like having that awareness of that in the pre-hire is helpful.
100%.
That's so interesting. Was there another question?
Hello, my name is Shannon, and I am internal communications at Alaska Airlines. I just want to say hello, and Lizzie, kia ora. When you touched on the ERGs, I got super passionate about that because I am actually a co-chair of our business resource group, is what we call it, at Alaska for our Pacific Islander Alliance. And that's one of the things that I'm super, super passionate about. So when you touched on the topic of leveraging these employees or these groups, I love that. We do that all the time, but it tends to be in a celebratory manner. And I'm just really curious to know what your thoughts are when there are topics that impact the communities of these groups that are not so positive. What comes up for you when you think about leveraging their voices or tapping into their insight, both internally and externally, since it may be a really sensitive conversation? Thank you.
Yeah, that's really true. Like you don't want to use those employee-led networks in that exploitative way at all. And like we try to be super respectful of they are leading like what they want to put out there internally, let alone externally, so that it is a psychologically safe space. First and foremost, like. Yeah, they're like private groups. They're like, we would, want to try to like make it very respectful. Is that answering the question somewhat? Yeah, that's awesome though. Yeah.
Can you actually add a little bit more context? Because I want to actually answer this because my gut's telling me that when it comes to sensitive information, I don't have a great answer. Maybe that is the answer. I think sometimes you don't know. It's okay to say you don't know. So if there's any more context you can add so that I can try to be helpful. But when it comes to things that are a little bit sensitive or a little bit hard that could offend people, you have to walk a tight line with that. So I don't really know, but if there's any more context, I would love to be able to add some value.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking for that. It is contextual, of course. But I guess I'm just curious to know if there are any things in place that are like guidelines or like what help to determine how and when you decide to tap into a resource group for conversations like these, and then what your thoughts are around like doing that externally maybe. And again, I know it is contextual, but just really curious if there's anything there that comes up for you.
You have any thoughts on that, on how and when and kind of like the policies around that?
So, for example, like with Black History Month or Women's History Month, like, you know, we've gone to those employee-led networks that we have, our BIPOC network and our Women at Lightspeed network, and sort of asked, like, what if anything would you like to surface, like, around this and amplify voices or experiences, so that they're driving it. So, like, it's really co-creating any program of content, like, with them, and very much letting them take the lead. So, like, you know, for those months this year, those networks, like, put together panels, put together employee perspectives. Some of those employee perspectives went external, but most of this stayed internal, so that to allow that that respectful sharing.
And I like the panel idea, you know, because I'm sitting here thinking, at times, like, who are we to judge what's sensitive and what's not sensitive? I think sometimes, again, there's a weird gray area with that. So I like the panel factor, and I like the fact that I like to trust human beings, and so I would like to think that if something is going to be extremely insensitive, that I would like to think that employees will do a good job of reading that and being careful around how they push that out. But I like the idea of putting some employees in the front of the company and kind of having more of a fireside chat and letting them authentically share their thoughts. And then trusting that they'll have the right thoughts, they'll have the right perspectives, and they'll know how to walk that fine line. And then there will be employees that don't want to walk that fine line, and things may get a little bit intense, but you'll just have to deal with that on a one-on-one basis. But I think at a macro level, human beings are typically, at scale, a good judge of not offending each other. And if those things happen, then you'll have to deal with it on a case-by-case basis. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we've got less than a minute left. If there's a really quick question, we can take it.
Hi, thanks. I'll try to make this quick. I'm Jennifer Need, and I'm with John Deere. 75,000 employees globally, half salaried, half production, manufacturing. So my question is related to comp and benefits and how employees feel about those things. Externally, we don't really have an issue with that because we're in a top tier comp and benefits situation. But once they come in, once they're past 30 days or 90 days, employees are tending to forget the value of their comp and benefits. And I wondered if you had ever encountered this, what kinds of ideas you might have for us to help.
I've really, all right, I know we have like 30 seconds. During the onboarding process, ask each individual employee what parts of the comp and benefits package they were most excited about, and then double down on that once they're hired. So pass that information on to their manager, and then have that manager hold a one-on-one, maybe 90 days after, and say, here are the 7 things that you said you really enjoyed and loved about the comps and benefit package. Let's talk a little bit more about that and how we can get you kind of informed with that. So make it very, very contextual.
Can staff base help with that, getting it individualized?
If you want to make the form non-anonymous, yes, that could be an option. Who is your person?
Jeff Corbin?
We'll have Jeff talk to you.
Make it happen, Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff on it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Lizzie, AJ, thank you both so much for joining the panel. I think we had a really great discussion today and would love to continue it during our networking session.
Perfect.
So
thank you.
Thank you both.
Thanks, everyone.